I just realized that my Swedish word of the day is hackfest. So, okay. I mean, hackathon I knew, but that it's hackfest, I just started it. I mean, blinking means go. Yeah, okay. So yeah, my talk is AI between perks and perils, and then I also talk a little bit about what we do on campus about perks and perils in AI. Now, well, I am now a professor in computer science. Technically, I have a PhD in developmental biology. It sounds a little bit of a weird historical trajectory here, because I actually work on something called neuroevolution. Or I have to say I worked on neuroevolution, because neuroevolution is this domain where you try to find out how intelligence evolved, and then you try to recapitulate that into the computer. So lots to do with genetic algorithms and neurocomputational approaches. And I have to say I worked on this because in 2022 that field died, pretty much, not because it's solved and not because it became uninteresting. The problem is that we have large language model, and that shifted the focus in artificial intelligence to them. And with lack of attention, now pretty much the field is dead, unfortunately. So I'm kind of looking at this sort of career choice now. What do I do, right? Do I actually stay with neuroevolution that nobody really is interested anymore? I mean, I am still interested in that, but that's probably not enough. Or do I jump over on large language models, artificial intelligence, how they define AI? Well, I said, can you render this? Right? It's like, you know the meme, right? It's like the new girlfriend, the old girlfriend kind of decision. And I said, well, this is not the correct way. Please, AI, update this image. This is the image is a little bit better, right? Darwin, and then I'm there. And I said, AI, you kind of still, forgot who I am, right? I'm 50, so this is probably the better way of thinking this. And this is actually the subtitle of this talk, is Arend having a midlife crisis? Because if I'm only having a midlife crisis, that's fine, right? I'll get over that, and everything goes on as before. And this whole stress about AI being perks and perils isn't a thing, okay? That's the good outcome. The bad outcome, that is a problem. So let's look at this a little bit more in detail. So when we talk about AI, well, the new thing, right, then we're typically talking about generative AI. And generative AI falls into a couple of categories. We had this before, but really we lump this into this thing now. It's voice to text, text to voice. It is text to image, image to text, and by extension, text to videos, videos to text, right? I mean, your YouTube feed is full of that stuff, right? Okay, and then it's the continue my sentence technology. The large language models pretty much do that. And I have an example that highlights one of the most important features of this thing. And that goes like this. Happy birthday to... Yes, you all knew it, right? There's absolutely no ambiguity about the next word. I can continue this with saying happy birthday to... Yes, okay. Happy birthday to... No, sorry. Happy birthday, sorry, I messed it up. Happy birthday to dear... Who? Who are we now singing this to, right? Because it's ambiguous. You could say, okay, maybe he's doing this because it's his birthday, and you say, happy birthday, dear Arend, right? It's like, okay, fine. Maybe, I mean, when you're on a birthday party, you don't know the first name, then exactly that's the moment when you struggle, right? Now, large language models are pretty much trying to fill in this particular word. And if it's unambiguous, like the you case, it's really easy and you get perfectly deterministic output, it's all fine. If it's unclear, it tries to reason from the context, and then it gives you the most likely answer. And this most likely answer is pretty much the data science equivalent of getting a prediction about this thing. That's the cool part. If, however, the context is confusing, the model isn't really trained, then it puts in something that doesn't make sense, and that's when we go to hallucination. So this not knowing what comes next is a feature because it predicts the thing given the data set, it makes up stuff, that's the danger, and if it's easy, then it's becoming a really cool tool. And so this is what programming, this is why these things are so cool for programming. If you know Python, you know that it's the colon that comes next. There's absolutely no question about that. And because programming languages have such a small ambiguity in their syntax and language, it's really easy for them to code. And this is why the main application for these models right now is being able to replace people who code, because of this lack of ambiguity. Okay. So that continue my sentence is pretty much the turns context and prompts into hopefully text I want or code I need. Okay. Well, and then there are agents. And I find it quite astonishing what happens with agents, because agents are not just large language models that work in the typical I ask a question, you give me the answer paradigm. This is what we actually learned in 2022, 2023, beginning of 2024, right? I ask, it answers. Agents work very, very differently. You ask a question and the large language model has the ability to formulate what's called a self-prompt. It has the ability to call a database. It has the ability to run code in the background, and it can do internet crawls and lots and lots and lots of other things. And with all these outputs, it doesn't return the answer. It just calls the next large language model, which has the same capabilities of self-prompting, database calling, blah, 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 blah. And that can call more large language models and so forth. So what you're doing when you are using an agent, you're tipping off an avalanche of large language calls that just propagate. Interestingly, the tech industry kind of forgot to tell us that. You see this when you see the little turny thingy saying thinking. That's when you have an agent usually doing stuff. And the tech industry decided, even though they forgot to tell us, that 2025 was the year of the agent. This is how important the tech industry thought about this. And they think, I mean, here rendered tech giants will solve everything. I don't really think they will solve everything, but there's a very, very good reason to think that these things are extremely powerful because they are much, much more autonomously trying to solve problems for us. Okay, so what do agents have an effect on my daily life, right? This is a graph here, 2020 to 2026, and in blue is the number of projects that I have on my hard drive with respect to research. And 2025 is when I started to extensively use AI code generation, because I work in computer science, right? It makes sense to do that. And you see that my projects explode. Yeah, that has a secondary effect, and that is the green one here, and this is my publications. This is a ×2, maybe ×3 multiplier. It's not that I let necessarily AI write my papers. No, I let it help me do my research. And also it's the topic of my research, so I have a double bonus here. What is really funny is this number here, because I updated this slide from 2 months ago by doubling this thingy. I'm already at like 2024 performance. And it's May. It's a little bit scary. And also obviously a cool opportunity. Okay, so awesome perk. And then at the same time, and I think this is a perk, but it's also a little bit of a provocation, because when we think about science, we typically have quantitative natural science on one side, and then we have this typical debate with qualitative humanities on the other side, and then we argue about what is right and what's wrong and so forth. Cool. Now, artificial intelligence, the way that we have it right now, is doing a really cool provocation, because there is this thing there that says, well, what about this book? And traditionally, well, you need to be a literary scholar trained by reading and writing a lot who developed a personal writing style, can now synthesize the literature and the corpus of the author into an answer about this book. Yeah, or I ask a machine that read every book on Earth, every paper on Earth, in every language on Earth, and all our context that we ever pooped into the internet. You see the provocation, right? Who's right? Who's wrong? And I think this is also the opportunity here, because we can start moving this point around. Because if there's something that can only be done by humans, it is an extremely interesting target for artificial intelligence. And we find out what makes us special. Or if we cannot do this, we move other scientists into this domain. We can now do quantitative analysis of qualitative results, if you so want. So cool provocation, cool opportunity. I put it at perks. So what about perils? What are the dangers here? Well, what's the downside of all of this, maybe? I wrote an article in 2017 already. And I said that I'm really afraid that economic change that comes from artificial intelligence automating jobs away happens faster than our economy or social structures and politics can deal with that. That was before, 5 years before 2022. And now everybody's like, wait a moment, is AI going to replace me? And then, of course, I'm also kind of scared of unintended consequences because this technology is dropped on us without any test whatsoever. We are the test. So, yeah, that's what I'm mostly afraid of. So the question is, will we live on the left side, right, where AI works with us happily and helps us, and we are in a great flourishing economy and society, or will it just outsource everything to AI and we become unemployed? Like, this is the stuff. I write on Medium about this thing much, much more funnily, let's say. Okay. Now, as I said, I teach in computer science, and this is where this becomes super, super obvious, this problem. Because, well, I try to be a good teacher, and instead of just asking questions, I asked, can you demonstrate your skill by solving a particular problem? Do a project. And of course, with this project, I have a couple of specifications. For example, make this website with these specs and these requirements, and then you pass the test. Yeah, now my students actually just use whatever coding tool and develop this thing. Because I'm using exactly the same coding tool to run my research. Because these tools, and I was really laughing at the beginning of 2025 about it, are as good as a third-year PhD student in computer science with respect to their programming skill, including the mistakes that they're doing, right? But yeah, that's a real problem. Because now, pressing these buttons, I could have pressed those buttons. Why do I need a programmer in there in the first place? Because also, again, in computer science, it's really easy. I can test these solutions with AI. I can also test these things without AI. But yeah, cool. Now I'm not teaching that much anymore. I have more time. So if I now want to teach stuff, of course, I use AI to create class content. Just so that they can just do this themselves, right? You can use the tool to teach yourself, which comes down to the question, what am I doing here? I mean, I don't need them. They don't need me. They are obsolete. And what's happening, right? So they're also like what we are doing here, right? Because this tool is so good in my domain. Okay, yeah, there are a couple of jobs where you think that you are safe. And I actually let AI render it, and it totally proved that it can't spell right. But yeah, some of us think we're safe. Yeah, I hope you're realizing this might be a question of time. And then there are a couple of other even scarier effects, and this is enshittification. If it's something starts good and that gets progressively worse because profit extraction becomes more important than quality. I've lived in the US, I see this. It's really difficult to buy a high quality product because everything is cheap and low quality. So that's where this goes. Ironically, this also applies for labor. Just because you're really good at something doesn't mean that we can replace you with something that is only 50% as good but costs almost nothing. That's the problem also. So yes, your job might be safe at the highest level, but it might be really, really cheaply outsourced on a lower level. There's another one, and I think this is the thing that will happen sooner than later. Of course, we know 1177, our Vårdcentral, right, our urgent care that we call. And what happens to me usually is that when I have the time and I feel sick enough, that's when I call. And then what they do is they put this thing on an answering machine so that they call me later when I don't have time and I've already been in pain for long enough to actually help me. Because, of course, our triage nurses are completely overrun by the demand. It's a real problem. So, yeah, cool. Let's get our AI to answer the 1177 call. Would be really cool, right? A governmental sanctioned medical AI that tirelessly answers your question, has access to the global medical knowledge, and can also book an appointment. Right? You're not talking to the book an appointment triage nurse anymore. You're talking to the fullest AI expert system that's possible because we can put this there. Now, I really, really like this idea because I know how to talk to chatbots. Also, I talked to my parents, right? My dad is a medical doctor, my mother is a pharmacist, and my dad says, oh, I love this too. Because he's a medical doctor, he understands what an other alternative opinion means. He appreciates that something else than a human who can make mistakes gives an answer there. My mother absolutely hates this idea to talk to a machine. So some of us are cool, some of us are really hating this. The question is not if we hate or love this thing. The question is if what we're doing is better. We're not testing this at all. We're going to get this thing because it's cheaper. And also, I mean, this is actually the problem with most of these technologies right now. They are dropped on us because they're cheaper, because they're marketing opportunity, but nobody has tested the actual effect of them. So there's also a really nice compromise. If you can take 80% of the calls away from the triage nurse that people like me that love to talk to the chatbot do, that person has more time to actually deal with patients like my mother who wants to talk to a real person. So there's also a win-win situation in there. We just have to find out what the right way is. Okay. There's another one, and I don't know if it's a perk or it's a peril, but somebody at the beginning of 23 wrote this, and I can't find who did it, but it's a really cool comment. AI will never reach human-level intelligence, looking at the first chatbots, right? Because no model will ever be able to replicate the mindless intellectual abyss of a student essay. Created at 4 a.m. by someone who hasn't attended a single class, doesn't own the textbook, and genuinely doesn't know what the course is about. Yet still produces 2,000 words of confident, grammatically flawless, structural, sound, absolute nothingness that vaguely tries to please the professor. Before 2023, we read these essays, right? And we're like, oh my God, there went so much energy into this thing that you completely failed, right? And the argument here is, no, AI can't be that stupid, right? Yeah, it's 2026, and you have read all those essays, right? So our students are capable of creating this complete mind void by not being able to use the computer properly. Okay, and at the same time, right, AI just helped me write a research paper, including lit review, computational, doing all of these things. I'm not counting the 2,500 GPU hours, but it took about a week to write the paper using AI. Peer-reviewed, everything's fine. I stand fully behind it. Not because I let this thing ghostwrite, but because I use this thing as a power tool. Interesting disconnect, right? And this is something that we observe a lot in our classes. For example, you all know tic-tac-toe, the little things with the X and O's, right? And this is the standard textbook example for reinforcement learning. And if I teach this thing in a normal course, you have this typical normal distribution where some of them are very good, most of them just pass, and then you have this long tail to the left where people fail. Okay. We change the game now because our students need to know how to use AI, and we say we allow AI usage. And this is what happens. 2/3 of our students absolutely thrive. They're giving me not only a better solution, but they also critically think about it, test other algorithms, compare algorithms, visualize these things, have a lot of fun with these things, and genuinely learned more using the tool. Yeah, for the price of the other third that sent in their assignments, showing me how their algorithm allegedly worked and don't understand that their code completely messed up. They don't even know how wrong they are. To the point where it's hilarious, right? I look at the graph and I know that the line should go up because better is up, and the line goes down. And they don't see that. What's going on here, right? And you see this also in your newsfeed, right? Half of them are like, AI is awesome. I earned $50,000 with my new company overnight, blah, blah, blah. Or AI is terrible, it ruined my life. I can't tell heads and tails. And oh my God, these are all the mistakes that it does. It's the same phenomenon, right? It seems that this is this bifurcation happening with this tool. Great versus terrible. Some of them are held back and some of them accelerated by this technology. Now, I don't know what the answer is, but I have a good idea. And I think it has something to do with this Bloom's taxonomy. This is our core teaching paradigm since the 50s. You pretty much start at the bottom of this pyramid with explaining kids that they should remember something, then they need to understand, then they need to apply, then they need to analyze, then they evaluate, and then finally they can create. The logic here is you need to know how to use the pen to write stuff so that in the end you can write a book. Makes sense, right? The problem is that this is completely incompatible with how I think. And it seems that it doesn't matter where in this pyramid you start, you still can learn this. Because I typically start with trying to make stuff. I'm starting at the top. And then it doesn't work, of course, because I have no clue how to do this. I'm a really bad professional now. And so I need to find out what it was I evaluate. And then I find out where the mistake is I analyze. Then I find out how to apply this thing. And then it suddenly clicks. And because I've immersed myself, I remember everything that I did there. I'm a top-down learner, not a bottom-up learner. I'm also a scientist. I work on problems that nobody solved before. Whereas our education system seems to presuppose that everything is known beforehand, so that you just have to remember and create at the last point. And now we're meeting generative artificial intelligence that we haven't figured out how to use, which you cannot trust because it doesn't give correct answers in some fraction of the time. And I think we're completely missing the point because we are focusing so much on the intelligence part that we're completely forgetting that this is a generative tool. It is fuel for creativity more than it is a fuel for intelligence. And so I think we should actually start teaching this whole thing differently. And I think this is the reason why half of us struggle and half of us strive. Because half of us are bottom-up learners and half of us are top-down learners. Provocative hypothesis, right? When I take this in education viewpoint, like, yeah, we need to look into this. It's like, yeah, please. This is also sort of, when I talk to my friends that thrive with AI, they all report the same thing. They're all top-down approach. Do stuff first, find out how it fails, win in the end. Okay. That suggests something funny here, right? Because I said it's a generative thing. Every problem is now a new challenge, and maybe we can solve all of this with AI. That's the premise that this suggests. That might actually not be really good. Let's say I outsource teaching to AI, which means I have more time, which means it accelerates my research, and so I write more papers. Cool. Because I write more papers, I'm actually overloading the peer review system, so yeah, no problem. Let's add AI peer reviewers. We're flooding this whole thing with more peer reviews. Awesome. That means I now need AI lit review to condense all that fluff back to a couple of usable things so that I can turn this into better teaching outcome, better understanding. And then, yes, of course, I can use this to create new tools with this knowledge, and it goes on and on and on and on. It seems like a bad idea, right? This is this explosion of tools. And this is pretty much what a lot of us experience. There are so many different tools to choose from. We have no idea what's going on. So just because this thing is cool and making tools doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea. Everything has two sides. Let me tell you this story, which proves the opposite. I use Claude Code for this, to all of this, and I wanted to create something that I call FlowScript. FlowScript is Python. It tries to actually incorporate, bless you, it tries to incorporate easy calls to large language models. So instead of having tons and tons of overhead, I just want to ask a question to the AI and get the result back, easily integrated into my code without tons of overhead. Of course, this is a software library that I let write by Claude Code. So I have this tool now. Now, I'm also interested in actually generating artificial content or automatically generated content, particularly stuff that's satirical and funny, because that seems to be a hard problem for AI. So I let Claude Code write a news crawler that gets the most interesting 100 posts for this day. Okay, that was easy. And then I run this thing through FlowScript to filter out the ones that lend themselves to be most satirical. So pick the ones that Trump and Musk said. It's usually the very good source. Okay. Again, everything AI generated. So I have this database with good prompts that might allow for a satirical piece. And so I let Claude write a web server that shows them to me so that I can edit them. Once I selected 5 or 7 of them, I hand this back to AI, which is another script, another tool that now produces some kind of suggestion. Now, this suggestion for a satirical piece is turned into a script for a 10 to 30-second YouTube video. Okay, so this is the typical script. Now, I also have a tool, or let Claude write a tool, that is a video description language that takes a script and renders this into the video with voice and everything. Okay, so now I have a script, I have a tool, again, all AI generated, just need another tool that takes the script and turns this into the video transcription language, and then I hit play, and then I have this video. Oh my God, I just went to town and writing, I don't know, 18 tools or something like that. It's the exact opposite of what I just before that says there are too many tools. I can't tell you what is right or wrong. I just power played one thing and then said the other thing is wrong, right? I'm really kind of torn between this. What is right, what is wrong? Here, it was all custom-made, specific, fine. Would I hand this over to somebody else? No, I would tell the next person, use Claude or any of these tools creatively to solve your problems. Don't reuse my stuff. And I think Douglas Adams, what is it, 1979, wrote this Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know if you've read it. It's really, really funny. They build a computer that tries to give them the answer to the universe, life, and everything, and the answer is 42. And if you think about this a little longer, you realize something quite profound, and that is they turned AI into a prophet. Give me the answer. And what they got is something that they don't comprehend. So don't turn AI into a prophet. That's I think, the simplest take-home message that Douglas Adams already understood in 1980. Instead, it's a tool, it's a maker. Use it to be creative. Use it as a tool. It's a much, much better paradigm to work about this. Okay. So lots and lots of perks and lots of perils. And if you are at least a little bit like me, I hope you're also excited, afraid, and insecure. Right? Okay. You're laughing. You're just excited. Okay, fine. Okay, so let's take another meme here. I'm going to have to science the shit out of it, right? The Martian. I think he's right, except that we are going to have to science the shit out of it. Because otherwise we don't know what to use, what to do, whatever. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what we are doing here on campus. And we think about all of this as a transdisciplinary approach, because it's not just a single computer science problem anymore. It is transcending all of us. And so we came up with something we call CHAI, Center for Human and Artificial Intelligence. And at the highest level, you can think about it as in this way. You have human intelligence, high, and you have artificial intelligence, AI. And of course, the first question is, how do we get the most out of AI? Right? How to use this tool properly? And then I think the inverse question is, how is AI going to change us or society or all of this? Because, of course, our actions have consequences, and we should think about this much, much more carefully. Right? The 1177 is one of those examples. And then, because this thing is made by us from our data, I think a very, very important question is, how much human intelligence is artificial intelligence, or how much artificial intelligence isn't human intelligence? Right? How is it not what we are, and how is it what we are? Because then we can find out how it makes decisions that are different from us, how it makes decisions that are properly for us. So, CHAI, Center for Human Artificial Intelligence, this is this high-level overview. There's lots and lots of activity around it. We have a couple of proposals coming on, a couple of funding opportunities in the future. It has to do with our direct environment. So we are developing all of this. So let me briefly talk about stuff that I did. Yeah, we have enough time. So I typically work on game theory because it has something to do with decisions and so forth. And then I have a paper about incentivizing cooperation between humans in the presence of AI. How can you use AI in such a way that we cooperate better with each other? We've looked at large language models and found out that they absolutely do not understand probabilities the way you and I understand probabilities. And if they give you an advice, they talk like a machine to you, not like somebody that is a human that has the same understanding of probabilities than you and I do. If you do prompt engineering, this is a super messy thing, because you improve something and you think you can use this improvement and further improve your prompt, and then it becomes worse. So the whole prompt landscape is something that we call really, really rugged. Let's not talk about AI consciousness. It's very, very philosophical. But then we also try to find out what happens if you let AI just create prompts and then get these prompts into images and these images to prompts and so forth, and let AI be creative on themselves. And oh my God, it's a mess. It's actually as terrible as you can think about it. It's converged to, I think, 7 core ideas there. We let dark personalities like psychopath, narcissist, Machiavellian do trade decisions and let them negotiate with each other. Guess what? The psychopath is a really, really good negotiator. Yeah. Your bank is now going to deploy a psychotic LLM to trade better. I mean, we have the fact that it's the better trader, right? Should you do that is a completely different question, but it's dark, yes. We let AI date AI, and you think, oh my God, this is so freakily weird. And the answer is yes, because it has nothing to do with how we date, because large language models are absolutely bad representatives of gender and dating and everything in there. They're really, really wrong artifacts. But somebody had to look at that. And then there's hope. When you and I make decisions, particularly in public goods game situations, we are actually acting as if we are living in a community. So we are having the idea of public goods or the greater good in mind, and our decisions are biased towards that. We are not fully selfish. And our fear was that AI is fully selfish, and the answer is no. AI, fortunately, is trained in such a way that it's not that. It has the same ideal there. So there is hope that they're not out competing us. Okay, so that's just what I did. But let's look at a couple of other dimensions here. With the help of our university, I got all the 32,000 theses that are in DIVA between 2020 and 2026 that are written in English, master, bachelor, PhD thesis. 32,000. Well, let's AI analyze this, because I was curious how much effect you see of writing AI in these theses. That's not the really cool graph. It just shows that there's one indicator here, but you can look at lots and lots of other indicators. The predicted AI likelihood is something that AI is really bad at predicting that something is from AI, so this is an artifact. But if you look at grammar quality, vocabulary, the wordiness of things, you see that these trends go up after 2022. We have AI pretty much prevalent, I think, in about 22% of our thesis now. The big question is the academic quality also getting better? And this is quite interesting, because if AI can communicate better for you, it makes certain things more obvious to you, and then maybe it is actually improving academic quality. The problem is that if you let AI rate it, AI says, of course, academic quality goes up because it wrote it, right? So we're not sure if academic quality actually went up, but we see traces in there. And also quite interesting, I don't have this slide here, the adoption rate is different between disciplines. Computer science immediately picked up on that. Medical is kind of second, third place, and then it goes to nature, environment, biology, and then, of course, humanities is last, because, of course, writing is so important in humanities that they try to not outsource that. They see quality in this, but I think they're also probably missing out on something. Okay, but also, we could have not analyzed 32,000 theses 3 years ago. I mean, the manpower alone is insurmountable, right? And we had AI read every thesis, right? Okay. Or we did this for a center grant recently. I looked at the 52,000, and not the 52,000 papers, the 52,000 abstracts of papers that were published on the theme of AI in entire Sweden since 2020. So cool, like a lot is what we are publishing. And it's actually comparably more than to other universities in this regard. So Sweden is really pushing AI, it seems, already since 2020. The sobering thing is that only about 1,200 of these papers are actually on generative AI. And we can map out this field. And it turns out that we are a little bit old school with respect to AI technology. We're doing what everybody does. It's not very innovative. We're picking up on this. And it's only 1,200, 1,500 papers of this. And I have 1% of that. That's the scary one. It's really scary. When we are at Dalarna University, I have my typical job. I publish a couple of papers, and I'm 1% of Sweden's AI capital. That can't be right. We have to do something about that. Okay. So let's talk about a couple of other people on campus. Lenka, Sylvie, Yves, Miguel are working on critical thinking. And the core idea here is, and I mean, I'm just data analytic, but critical thinking here works like this. If you can give students the ability to critically think better, they should be able to use AI better and not produce these mindless essays that I talked about. So how can we improve human thinking? Well, we have to teach critical thinking in the use of AI. So they work a lot on that. Interestingly, that is paired with how can we teach AI agents to think more critically. If we can imbue them with critical thinking, their product is better. So it's a nice two sides of the same coin, critical thinking for AI and critical thinking with AI. Let's promote that. So we have this group on campus that does this. There's way more that they're doing. They're also looking at how to actually evaluate theses better, how to improve thesis writing, those kind of things. And then there's another thing that we are discussing also with education, and there's no good word for it, so I say group work laboratory. Imagine you have a Zoom meeting, but in the Zoom meeting, you're not talking to 9 other students, you're talking to 9 bots. Okay, that sounds really crazy. Why would you talk to 9 AIs at the same time? Well, we use these AI to actually model real characters. And so suddenly we can actually have this flight simulator for a classroom. Teach 9 bots what you want to find out. Make one of the bots have ADHD. How do you deal with that? Have one of them be really, really obstinate. I was immediately jumping to having hostile personalities, like, oh, cool, let's try to find out how you manage a business meeting where you have a narcissist that tries to take over your meeting. Train that skill. You know how this is normally done? With actors in a room. You know how expensive that is, right? The question is if we can actually model this properly, right? We already found out that psychopaths trade better, so yes, they do represent these technologies. So let's try to get this group chat simulator going so we can test education environments, group collaboration, and we can test how humans do this, or what happens if they just solve the problem by themselves, right, as teams. You can also have them elect leaders, and suddenly you are in AI governance. Very much a prototype, but something that we would absolutely love to do. And then the last one that looks so totally like a computer game island, right? Yeah, in the back end, we have something that very much looks like a game engine. These bots are controlled by large language models. They have names, they run around, they have attitudes, they can do stuff. The important point is that what they're doing is constrained by the environment. It is a spatial environment that changes over time. They have to interact with others. And there is a reason that you see this cornfield here, or the water source, or there are coconuts and stuff like that, because they can actually start trading with each other and do division of labor and can actually kind of build their own society. What society are they going to build? I mean, I know what we did, right? We went to capitalism and then to poverty. Or maybe this is an island that goes to communism. Who knows, right? What are they going to do? I find it quite interesting. Or maybe they can solve the problem in such a way that they come up with a solution that is new, that we haven't tried. Or crazier, coming back to my parents, they are too old to experience that, but maybe we have retirement homes which are run by AI. And then you have these AI bots helping them and so forth. Reminds me a little bit of Stanford Prison Experiment. What happens if you put AI in Stanford Prison Experiment? Are they going to abuse the inmates or not? It's an ethical test. We cannot use with real people. That's completely unethical. Yeah, but we are going to have these scenarios. Let's test AI first. So that's why we are creating this matrix or AI island to actually allow these things to play out scenarios that we would otherwise not like to test on ourselves. Okay, so do I just have a midlife crisis? Let's come back to that question. I leave this open. I mean, it's probably yes, but I think there's an amazing tool that makes some of us useless or less competent or unemployed. I think we have a really cool provocation with quantitative and qualitative research because it moves qualitative into quantitative domain and vice versa. It questions our idea of education with respect to top-down or bottom-up education. And yes, don't make it a profit. Think of it as a tool maker. It's a transdisciplinary phenomenon. It needs our full engagement. We have to do science with it, right? What does it do to us? And then that will hopefully inform us about the right choices and how we actually go from here. And avoid the perils and have the perks. So that we hopefully end up with something like that and not the Terminator scenario or whatever horror view you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arend. And maybe we have some afraid and excited or both questions from the audience. I think you can use the mic in front of you if you want to ask a question. Yeah.
You should be excited. There's lots of science to be done.
Yes. Actually, I read
one small question. Have you...
Can you wave?
Here.
Oh, there.
Too close. Have you seen a YouTube clip where someone has put a number of AI bots to play the game Among Us. It's quite hilarious.
Yeah, my colleague did that with Squid Game. Well, not published, but AI, the ones that she used, is obviously trying to avoid life and death decisions, right? So what they actually do is they select a leader that has to do it. I mean, it's a rather creative solution, right? Nobody in Squid Game did that, first of all. It defers responsibility, and it's a hallmark of them kind of not trying to want to kill people.
The whole point in this game is for the traitors to kill the innocent and for the innocent to vote out the traitors. And it really plays along with your thesis around psychopaths winning stuff, because the traitors win and they are really psychopathic.
Yeah, we did that with Sissy Fight. Sissy Fight is a game from 2000 about a, well, schoolyard situation where you have, I mean, okay, it's a stereotype, I apologize, but 4 little girls bitching with each other. Sorry, that's the game, that's what's called Sissy Fight. But you can form alliances, and these alliances can make sure that you are not the one that gets bullied. Right, so it's a typical social interaction game in a very hostile environment. And we found that the collaborative and nice personalities win because you have to get allies. Getting allies is much, much harder, but when you get that, being nice is an advantage. So it depends a lot on the game, I think, and there is hope. But yeah, I mean, what is it? If you play Werewolf, for example, right, you have no chance against the AI. Or what is it, Settler of Catan? No ability to win this. We still win in chess if it's a human, unless it's just a pure algorithm. So Stockfish or whatever will win against you, absolutely. But the large language models have a real problem with getting the moves right in the first place.
In one of your papers, you use different AI models in a loop, and they tend to converge against what you call a visual elevator music.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you published these images as well, the result of this so-called creative process?
Yes. I mean, you can also find them everywhere. It's kind of funny. So what happens is that you take an image, you turn that into a prompt, you let AI actually describe what's in the image, you take this description and render the image again. The assumption is that you get into this random nonsense, right? And the truth is they're converging on 11 or so, or 12 meaningful topics. One is a lighthouse. One is 2 people in rain in Paris. They're celebrating people that do sport. 2 animals doing animal things with each other. Running, flying stuff, right? Scenery. You know where you find them? Go to the IKEA catalog. Because these are all meaningless, not the IKEA images, but the images in the background, or that IKEA puts in the image frame as a placeholder for you to put something in there. The thing you don't care about. That's why it's complete fluff, and it converges reproducibly to this fluff. And also very, very biasedly, because it converges to what we would call Western fluff, or what is it called? Wicked, right? The Wicked data set, because the data set is not coming uniformly across all cultures. Or when they actually arrive at Asian stuff, right? It looks like a European cartoon about Asia, not like Asian art, because it's underrepresented in this data set. So yeah, there's on Medium, there's a blog post which has the images in there, and they look beautiful, or also completely like forgettable. No, whatever. Yeah.
Fascinating, yes. Any more questions? Yes. You can use the mic in front of you. Push the button.
Yes. Yeah. How do you see the role of libraries in next 10 years according to the AI development?
I mean, the thing is, we had that question, I think, 10 years ago already. Maybe I'm a good example here because I don't go to the library to get a book, ever. Sorry, right? Because you are supporting the infrastructure for me to just click the paper and read it at home, right? So I understand that there is a role, but I mean, you don't want to be an IT department. And we discussed this with, Hirschberg Library quite extensively, because they have a beautiful building and nobody comes. Or Michigan State University campus has the same problem. And so what they did is, and I think it's a really good level or really good entry point, they create these places where you can actually meet people and do stuff creatively. And then also educate people on the tools. So the maker spaces go there. I would move the how to use AI seminar there, right? Or everybody that we're leaving behind in terms of lifelong learners, right? That would be, I think, a very, very valuable target to put all the energy that usually goes into providing books that nobody reads or nobody needs because all of it is done by the IT backend. But it is still, I think, an extremely important community hub that is there to diversify knowledge. It's just that the medium changes probably away from just books. That's my opinion. And I mean, I like being there. It's really cool places. And yeah, I talk a lot in libraries, but not for the books, if that makes sense. Sorry. I mean, you see the exact same problem, right? That's why you asked.